My uncle joked at a wedding that I had different blood. Everyone laughed, but soon it wasn't funny anymore. I laughed too, just to keep the air light. It was a hot summer day in Tuscany, my cousin's wedding. Everyone was 3 glasses deep, sun-kissed, buzzing with Prosecco and nostalgia. My Uncle Tony, a loudmouth who's always been one to stir the pot, raised his glass and said, "To our little prince with the different blood." Then he winked at my dad. Everyone chuckled. Even I did. But I didn't forget. That night, while sobering up by the stone wall outside the villa, I kept hearing that line. Different blood. The phrase nagged at me. I grew up in Westchester, the only child of 2 very successful people, my mother, a private art consultant, and my father, a venture capitalist. We lived in a world of first-class flights, private schools, silent dinners, and strict appearances. And I never once questioned if I belonged there. I was theirs. Of course I was. But I've got this thing in me. Once something starts gnawing at me, I can't let it go. Back in New York, I started noticing things. Slivers of oddness that were always there but had never meant anything. Like the fact that there were almost no baby pictures of me before age 2. My parents had this one photo framed in the hallway, me, chubby-cheeked in a cashmere sweater, propped up on a bench in Central Park. But it had no date. No context. And every time I asked, they told the same story like it was rehearsed. That was your first time seeing snow. You loved it. I never thought to ask why there weren't any newborn pictures. No hospital shots. No stories about my birth. Then there were the documents. My mother kept old papers in her study, tax returns, property deeds, that sort of thing. I'd never looked at them before, but one night, when they were out at a charity gala, I poked around. I found my baptism certificate. Catholic. Issued in a church in Queens, not far from JFK. I was baptized at 18 months old. That made no sense. My parents had been living in London at that time. I knew because I'd seen pictures, Christmas in Chelsea, my dad standing by the Thames, holding me. So what were we doing in Queens? The spiral started slow, but it picked up speed. I started watching them. Closely. The way they'd change the subject if I brought up my early years. The nervous glances between them. I even started recording them, little voice memos when we were having wine on the terrace or talking over dinner. My mother once said, offhand, "You were such a quiet child. Almost like you knew not to cry." That one kept me up at night. The big moment came when I found a letter. It was tucked into the back of my father's locked filing cabinet, the key hidden under a false bottom in his humidor. He always was dramatic. The letter was from a woman named Carmen Jimenez. Dated 1995. Written in broken English. "Thank you for the money. I hope he have good life. You promise he go school and have family. I miss him always." There was a Polaroid attached to it. A young woman, maybe 20, holding a baby. That baby was me. I didn't sleep for 2 days. Everything I thought I knew collapsed in on itself. My real mother was not the woman who raised me. My parents, these pristine, educated, old money people, had bought me. There's no other way to put it. Somewhere, in some godforsaken transaction cloaked in legalese and privilege, they paid someone for a child and flew him home like a piece of luggage. I was that child. I confronted them. Of course I did. My father sat stiffly in his leather chair, lips pursed, like a man ready to deliver a quarterly earnings report. My mother, she didn't deny it. She just cried, silent and shallow, like she was mourning a pet. "We couldn't have children," she finally said. "And we wanted you so much." I asked them where Carmen was. They said they didn't know. They'd gone through someone. A facilitator. No last name. No record. Just money. A lot of it. For weeks, I said nothing to anyone else. I went to work. I drank more. I stopped answering calls. My girlfriend noticed, of course. Eventually, she left. I didn't blame her. I felt like a walking ghost in someone else's house. But in that silence, something shifted. I stopped being angry. Or rather, I got tired of being angry. It didn't change the fact that somewhere out there was a woman who gave birth to me, held me, named me. And then let me go. I had to find her. It took me 3 months to track her down. Carmen Jimenez. Not exactly a unique name. I started with the letter, the church stamp at the bottom was faded but legible. I reached out, lied a little, said I was doing genealogy research. The priest was old, polite, and too tired to be suspicious. He told me Carmen used to clean the chapel. She was quiet, kind, and disappeared not long after her baby vanished. That was the word he used. Vanished. It took another month of digging, calling shelters, old neighbors, even hiring a private investigator who specialized in finding estranged family. Finally, we got a hit, a woman matching her name and description living in a small coastal town in the Dominican Republic. Santo Domingo was noisy, humid, alive. Everything my life in New York wasn't. I booked a flight without telling anyone. I didn't even leave a note. I arrived with nothing but a name and a picture. I felt like a fraud. Like maybe I was chasing a ghost. But the moment I saw her, standing behind a fruit cart, gray in her hair, eyes like mine, I knew. My knees buckled. She didn't recognize me. Of course she didn't. I was taller now, paler, soft hands, expensive shoes. But when I said her name, really said it, trembling, she stopped. Looked at me for a long time. And whispered, "Mi hijo?" That word. My son. We both cried. Her home was small. Tin roof. Peeling paint. Roosters in the alley, heat pressing through the windows like a weight. But it smelled like real food. Home-cooked rice, beans, onions in oil. It smelled like something I hadn't known I was missing. She served me without asking. Just placed a plate in front of me like she'd been waiting to do it for 30 years. We sat in silence while I ate. My Spanish was shaky. Her English was better than I expected, but still rusty. Somehow, it didn't matter. Eventually, she spoke. I had no choice, she said. I was 19. They told me you would die. That you were sick. That you needed a family. A better one. I nodded. I'd already figured that much out. Then she said something I wasn't prepared for. You have a sister. Her name was Lucia. 16. Dark hair, bright smile, and a fire in her eyes I'd never seen in anyone. She came home from school carrying books and a busted backpack, barely gave me a glance at first. I looked like a stranger. Maybe even a threat. But when Carmen told her who I was, when she pointed at me and said, "This is your brother," something changed in her face. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat down, stared at me, and said, "Do you like pizza?" Like we had all the time in the world to start over. That night, we made it from scratch. Dough, canned tomatoes, cheap cheese. She danced while the oven heated up. Carmen laughed at us like we were children. I hadn't laughed like that in years. I stayed for a week. Slept on a cot. Woke up with the sun and helped Carmen sell fruit. Talked with Lucia about school, books, boys she wasn't supposed to like. She wanted to be an architect. Said she'd build me a house one day. You already have one, she said. But maybe you need one that feels like you. That hit harder than I expected. Before I left, I told them everything. Who I was. Where I lived. The lie I had believed my whole life. I told Carmen I didn't hate her. I told Lucia I'd come back. And then I flew home, to a cold apartment in the city, to parents who'd left 3 voicemails pretending everything was fine. But nothing was fine. And it never would be again, unless I made it right. Back in New York, nothing fit the same anymore. My apartment felt too clean, too quiet. My fridge was full, but I kept thinking about the shared meals in Carmen's tiny kitchen, how they made do with so little, and yet somehow it felt like more. Work was a blur. Meetings, numbers, faces that didn't matter. I'd sit through strategy sessions, nodding like a good little soldier, while my thoughts were thousands of miles away in a dusty street in Santo Domingo. It wasn't guilt exactly. It was something deeper. Guilt is surface level. This was bone deep. Like I'd been wearing someone else's skin for 30 years, and now I couldn't pretend it fit anymore. I stopped talking to my adoptive parents. They called, texted, emailed. My dad even sent a letter, old school, with neat cursive and a wax seal like he thought this was Downton Abbey. We raised you. We loved you. You don't owe anyone anything. But they were wrong. Because I did owe someone. I owed the woman who gave birth to me and then gave me away because she thought it would save me. I owed the sister who grew up with half a family because I was missing from it. I owed the truth, even if it hurt. I made a plan. Sold the Porsche. Cancelled the lease on my apartment. Moved into a one-bedroom above a bodega. My coworkers thought I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. But something about letting go of all that clutter felt right. I called Lucia first. Told her I wanted to help. She was quiet for a moment. You don't have to, she said. I know, I replied. But I want to. I flew back down 2 weeks later. This time, not as a tourist. Carmen cried when she saw me again. But this time, she held it together. Said she had something for me. It was a box, beat-up cardboard, tied with string. Inside were the only baby clothes she kept. A photo of her holding me at the hospital. A charm bracelet with a tiny silver M for Mateo. The name she gave me before I became Matthew in a Manhattan nursery. Mateo, she said, pointing to the bracelet. That was your name before. I held it in my hand and felt the weight of a lifetime I never lived. Over the next month, I did what I could. Found a real estate agent. Bought them a small house, modest by New York standards, but solid. 3 bedrooms, real roof, clean water. Carmen resisted at first. Said it was too much. Said I didn't need to prove anything. But it wasn't about proving anything. It was about rewriting the ending. Lucia cried when she saw her room. Cried again when I handed her a letter of acceptance, full scholarship to an English-speaking college in the capital. I pulled strings. Called in favors. Did what people like my father do every day to get what they want. Only this time, I did it for someone who actually deserved it. My last night there, Lucia sat next to me on the porch. You don't have to come back, she said. We'll be okay. I looked at her. Really looked. She had her mother's eyes. My eyes. There was fire in them, the kind that doesn't go out easy. I will come back, I told her. Not because I have to. Because this is where I'm supposed to be. The truth wrecked my past. But it gave me a future, one I could choose, one that wasn't built on secrets. The people who raised me gave me everything money could buy. But Carmen gave me life. Lucia gave me meaning. And now I'm giving it back. One brick, one book, one promise at a time. They say blood is thicker than water. But that's not the whole quote. The full saying is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. I used to think it meant family always comes first. Now I think it means the opposite, that the bonds you choose can be stronger than the ones you're born into. Or bought into, in my case. After getting Carmen and Lucia settled, I flew back one more time to New York, not to stay, but to settle things. There was a safety deposit box in my name. My parents had set it up years ago, filled it with things they thought I'd want someday, family photos, letters, a gold pocket watch from my grandfather, and a handwritten trust agreement, untouched since I turned 25. It hit me then, they'd planned every inch of my life. Where I went to school. Who I dated. Which friends were good for my image. Hell, they even had a list of potential wives. One of them was an ambassador's daughter I met twice at polo matches. But not once, not one damn time, did they ever ask me what I wanted. I didn't tell them I was coming. I just showed up at the estate. Same manicured hedges, same silent fountain. It looked like money and smelled like guilt. The butler answered the door. Different guy. New suit. Same dead eyes. My parents were in the sunroom. My mother's face went pale when she saw me. My father stood, trying to look dignified, but I could see the tremor in his jaw. "Matthew," he said. "We've been worried." I sat down across from them, hands folded. Calm. "I'm changing my name," I said. "Back to Matteo. That was my name before you changed it." They didn't respond. "And I'm transferring everything in the trust. Not to me. To a new foundation, one that funds education for girls like Lucia. Girls from families who don't have options." My mother looked like she'd been slapped. "You can't." "I already did," I cut her off. "It's done." The silence was thick. My father's voice came next. Cold. Corporate. "You're making a mistake. That money was meant for your future." "No," I said. "That money was meant to buy silence. I'm not for sale." I left that afternoon and haven't spoken to them since. They sent a lawyer after me, tried to stop the transfer. But it turns out, when you know the rules of the game, you can beat the players. Everything was legal. Bulletproof. I made sure of it. I walked away from it all, the penthouse, the private clubs, the art galleries with people pretending to understand pain they've never felt. And I never looked back. Now I spend half my year in Santo Domingo. The other half working remotely, managing the foundation, watching Lucia blossom into the kind of woman who could move mountains. She sends me her designs sometimes. Sketches of homes she wants to build, homes that belong to people, not portfolios. Last month, Carmen stood in front of the new stove in her kitchen, tears in her eyes, and said, "I never thought I'd live to see this." Neither did I. But sometimes the truth, no matter how ugly, is the only road to something real. I was born poor. Sold rich. Raised in a lie. But I found the truth. And I chose it. That's what makes me free. The nights are different here. In New York, I slept with blackout curtains and a white noise machine. Every sound felt like a threat. Sirens, engines, the hiss of radiators. I thought I needed silence. Turns out, what I needed was peace. Now I fall asleep to crickets. A dog barking in the alley. Lucia humming in the next room as she sketches. Carmen shuffling in the kitchen, always up before dawn, boiling water for café. There's no silence here, just softness. I started volunteering at a local school. At first they didn't trust me, the light-skinned outsider with expensive shoes and perfect Spanish that sounded like it came from a textbook. I don't blame them. I wouldn't trust me either. But I showed up. Every day. Sat on the floor with kids. Taught basic math. Helped paint the cracked walls. Repaired broken desks. I sweated through my shirts and tore my hands on wood splinters. Eventually, they stopped calling me Señor and just called me Matteo. Lucia brought me to a college open house in the capital. She held my arm like I was her father. I guess, in a way, I am, or at least something like it. She was glowing, trying to act cool, but I could see her bouncing inside. We sat in the front row of a seminar on architecture and design. The professor asked for questions. Lucia raised her hand, sharp and sure. When she spoke, the room turned quiet. Her voice carried. Clear. Measured. Proud. That's when I knew. It was all worth it. One evening, I got a letter forwarded to my Dominican address. No return name. But I knew the handwriting. I've always believed that love is proven by action. I hope someday you'll believe we loved you. Even if we failed you. Mom. She enclosed a photo, me at 5 years old, asleep on her lap, head tilted, eyes shut. She looked down at me like I was made of glass. I studied that picture for a long time. I don't hate her. But I can't go back. Some bridges don't burn. They just quietly fall apart when no one crosses them for too long. Carmen never asked me what happened with them. She just touched my shoulder when I told her the trust fund was gone. That it was helping other families now. I didn't give you away for money, she said. I gave you away for a chance. You gave me both, I replied. Now it's my turn to do the same. We hosted our first community meeting last week. I brought a few folks from the capital, social workers, educators, one brilliant young lawyer, to talk about rights, resources, and opportunity. 15 women showed up. Most with kids. Most skeptical. But they stayed. They listened. And by the end, they talked. Told stories that sounded like Carmen's, like Lucia's, like mine, if you stripped away the gloss. They weren't asking for handouts. They were asking to be seen. I see them now. It's funny. I used to think I'd build something big. A legacy. A company. A name. Now I just want to build something real. A school. A clinic. A home. Something that matters when I'm gone. Lucia's first semester flew by. She called every night at first, sometimes just to rant about how hard calculus was or how her roommate played music too loud. I let her vent. I didn't try to solve it. I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can give someone isn't advice, it's just being there. By midterms, the calls got less frequent. Not because she didn't care. But because she was growing. Meeting people. Holding her own. Becoming someone new, someone stronger. Carmen cried when she got Lucia's first semester report card. Straight A's. I don't know where she gets it, she said. I smiled and said nothing. I knew exactly where. I kept working. The foundation started small. A few grants. A pilot program for school uniforms and supplies. Scholarships for the best and the most overlooked, the kids like Lucia used to be, bright and boxed in by poverty. But it wasn't enough. I wanted more than charity. I wanted change. So I went back to the U.S. for 2 weeks. Sat in boardrooms with old contacts. The same people who used to toast me with single malt and talk about margins and acquisitions. They didn't understand at first. Why here, one asked, tapping the edge of my presentation. Why this place? There's no market. I smiled. I'm not building a market. I'm building a future. Some walked away. Most, actually. But a few stayed. The ones who remembered when I used to call them brothers, before I learned what that word really meant. They wrote checks. Big ones. I flew back to Santo Domingo with fire in my chest and enough money to make something permanent. We bought land just outside the city. Carmen called it un milagro, a miracle. I called it ours. We broke ground on the community center first. A place for learning. For health. For gathering. No marble. No glass walls. Just good bones and clean water and enough space to fit everyone who never had a seat at the table. Lucia helped design it. Her first real project. When she unveiled the blueprint, she stood at the front of the room, hands shaking slightly. I caught her eye. She smiled. You proud? She asked later. I've never been prouder of anything in my life, I said. And I meant it. Carmen's health started slipping that winter. Nothing dramatic, just a cough that lingered too long, a tiredness that didn't go away. The doctors said it was her lungs. Years of dust and work and not enough rest. Nothing terminal, but not easy, either. I tried to get her to slow down. She wouldn't. I need to keep moving, she said. If I stop, I'll disappear. So I started bringing her to the build site. Gave her a chair. Let her watch the center rise from the dirt. She never said much. Just sat there, fingers curled around a cup of coffee, eyes scanning every wall as it went up. This, she said once, feels like something that will last. It's strange, the things that outlive us. Not the trophies. Not the money. But the choices. The hands you hold. The people you lift. The names you carry, even when they come from broken places. Mateo was a name buried in a box for 30 years. Now it's carved into the cornerstone of a building that will still be standing when I'm gone. The grand opening was supposed to be simple, a few speeches, ribbon cutting, maybe a photo or two for the donors. But word spreads fast when something real gets built. The morning of the event, people started arriving before sunrise. Mothers with children, old men with folding chairs, teenagers with notebooks in hand. By noon, the crowd filled the dirt road and spilled into the neighboring fields. I stood at the edge of it all, stunned. Carmen sat beside me, wrapped in a shawl. She reached out, took my hand, and squeezed it. "You didn't just come home," she said. "You made one." Lucia gave the opening speech. She stood in front of a crowd that would have made me shake at her age, hell, even now. She spoke about architecture, but also about belonging. About the kids who'd walk through these doors and realize they mattered. About her brother, who showed up one day and never stopped showing up. I didn't cry. Not then. But my throat burned the whole time. She ended her speech with 5 words, "This is just the beginning." And damn if she wasn't right. The weeks that followed were a blur of movement. We opened classrooms, filled them with books and chairs and children who couldn't stop asking questions. We hired teachers from the city, but also trained locals. We turned a storage room into a clinic with 2 donated exam tables and a retired nurse who drove in twice a week. It wasn't perfect. But it was alive. And for the first time in my life, I felt the same. I still get letters from my adoptive parents. Mostly from my mother. Short ones now. Less pleading, more distant. Like she knows the door is closed but can't help knocking once in a while. One of them said, "I hope you're happy." It hit me harder than I expected. Because I am. But not in the way she meant. Not the curated, polished happiness they raised me to chase. Not success. Not status. I'm happy in a small, steady way, like a well-made roof during the rainy season. You don't see it from the outside. But inside, it keeps everything safe. Carmen's cough got worse in April. The doctors gave her medicine, told her to rest, but I knew the shape of it. I'd seen it before, in hospital rooms, in hospice. The quiet slide of a body saying enough. She fought it. Of course she did. She always had. But one evening, sitting in the courtyard watching Lucia draft new blueprints, she looked at me and said, "I'm not afraid." I asked her why. She smiled, tired but content. "Because you're here. And she's okay." She passed in her sleep a week later. No drama. No noise. Just the sound of rain on the tin roof and her breathing slowing to a stop. We buried her under the guava tree behind the center. The same place she used to sit and sip coffee while the foundation walls rose. I spoke last at the service. I didn't read from a page. Just spoke from the gut. She gave up everything so I could live a better life, I said. Now that life belongs to you. That night, I walked through the halls of the center. Dark, quiet, full of promise. I touched the walls, one by one, like they might hold her voice. They didn't. But they held her legacy. And maybe, in the end, that's the same thing. Grief doesn't hit all at once. It creeps. You wake up expecting to hear her in the kitchen, humming over boiling water. You glance at the front gate, thinking she'll be out there sweeping the dust from a place that's never stayed clean. You keep her number in your phone like she might call you first. But the line stays quiet. And eventually, so do you. Lucia handled it better than I did. Not that she didn't hurt, she did. But she channeled it into motion. Into blueprints and long nights at her desk. She worked like it was the only thing keeping her from sinking. I knew that feeling. One night, I found her asleep in the classroom, her head on a roll of paper. I covered her with my jacket and sat in the back row, just watching her breathe. She was my sister, but sometimes I forgot how young she still was. And how much she'd already survived. We expanded the center. 2 new classrooms. A proper medical wing. A rain catchment system on the roof. Every improvement felt like another promise kept. And people noticed. A woman from UNICEF visited. Quiet, professional, notebook in hand. She asked questions about our programs, our enrollment, our retention rates. When she left, she said, "You're doing more with less than most funded projects I've seen." I just nodded. We weren't chasing awards. We were trying to make sure the lights stayed on and the doors stayed open. But still, the recognition helped. More donors. More resources. More pressure. One day I got a call from my father. Not my mother this time. Him. I didn't pick up, but he left a message. "We're older now. We've made mistakes. But we're still your parents." I sat with that message for a long time. I didn't call back. Carmen's birthday came around in June. Lucia insisted on baking. From scratch. The kitchen was a disaster, flour on the floor, sugar stuck to her elbow, but she did it. A simple vanilla cake, decorated with guava slices. We lit a single candle and set it on the windowsill. No words. No singing. Just a moment. And that felt right. That summer, we started offering night classes. Literacy for adults. Vocational training. Parenting workshops. At first only a few came. Then word spread. Mothers who had never held a pencil before began learning to write their names. Fathers who had never changed a diaper sat through infant care demos without blinking. One woman said to me afterward, "I used to think it was too late. Now I think maybe it's not." That stuck with me. Maybe that's all this life is, giving people enough light to believe in one more try. The Foundation's next goal is to build a library. Not just books, but computers, mentorship, internet access. A place where knowledge doesn't come with a price tag or a passport. We've already got the land. Lucia's designing it. Her first solo project. She asked me what to call it. I said, "Call it Carmen." She smiled, nodded. Didn't even have to ask why. Carmen didn't get to go to college. She didn't get a retirement, or travel, or quiet mornings on a porch swing. But she got this, a center full of children, a daughter on the rise, and a son who came home not to be rescued, but to rebuild. Her life wasn't easy. But it meant something. And now it means more. The library opened in December. We didn't have a ribbon, so we used a long strip of fabric from one of Carmen's old dresses. Lucia tied it with a bow. We hung a hand-painted sign above the door. La Biblioteca Carmen. Inside, the books were second-hand. The tables were handmade. The paint still smelled fresh. But the room glowed. Kids rushed in, wide-eyed, like they were stepping into another world. Some of them had never held a book before. Some sat on the floor and just stared at the covers. One little boy traced the title with his finger and whispered, "Voi a lirlo to do." I'm going to read everything. That was the moment. Right there. Everything we'd done, everything we'd lost, paid for that moment. Lucia came home for break the next week. Taller, more confident. She didn't walk into rooms anymore, she filled them. She stood in the doorway of the library, arms crossed, taking it all in. "I want to build 10 more," she said. I just laughed. "Only 10?" She smiled. "For now." She's already working on plans for the next one, in the hills where access is hardest. No electricity, no roads, just a cluster of homes built into the earth. But there are children there, too. And where there are children, there's hope. Lucia gets that now. She understands that the world doesn't owe you fairness, but you can still build fairness into it, brick by brick, like she's doing. She's everything Carmen dreamed of. Everything I didn't know I needed until I found her. We started hosting mother-son nights at the center. Mostly games, cooking classes, story hours. The first time I watched a woman read to her boy, slow, halting, proud, I had to step outside for a breath of air. Not because it hurt, but because it healed something in me. You see enough love in the world, and it starts to patch over the places where yours was missing. One evening, after the kids had gone home and the sun was low, I sat in Carmen's old chair under the guava tree. Lucia joined me, 2 mugs of café in hand. "You ever regret coming back?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you never found that letter," she added. If Uncle Tony had never made that joke. I stared at the dirt under our feet. Thought about all the versions of myself that never made it. The ones who stayed quiet. Who never asked. Who never looked. And then I said, "Then I'd still be asleep." She nodded. Didn't press. That's the thing about real family. They don't need everything spelled out. The center's walls are covered now, with photos, drawings, messages. One frame holds a quote Lucia wrote by hand. "We are not what we were given. We are what we choose to give." I see that quote every morning when I open the doors. And every night when I lock them, I whisper a thank you, to the mother who gave me a way to save me, and the sister who gave me a reason to stay. We had our first graduation this spring. 30 kids in paper caps made from recycled folders, marching one by one across the community center courtyard. Some of them cried. A few tried to act too cool for it. But every last one of them held their head a little higher. Lucia handed out the certificates. I just stood off to the side and watched. She'd become something else entirely, a leader. A force. A woman with fire in her chest and steel in her spine. Carmen would have loved seeing her like that. When it was over, one of the mothers came up to me. She pressed something into my hand, a tiny woven bracelet, red and gold. The same colors Carmen wore when she sat under the tree. "Gracias," she said. "For giving them a future." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. The center's grown bigger than I ever expected. More classrooms. A full clinic now. Solar panels on the roof, a garden out back. We've had visitors from NGOs, universities, even a few journalists. They ask me how we built it. How we kept it going. I tell them the truth, we didn't build it on money. We built it on promises. To be better. To do better. To give back what was taken. They never print that part. Maybe it's too simple. Or maybe they know, deep down, it's not about them. I've never gone back to my old life. Not once. I still have a passport. A bank account. A name that opens doors. But I don't use them unless I need to. Not out of spite. Just because that man isn't me anymore. That life was sharp suits and soft lies. This one is dirt under my nails, clean sweat, and the sound of children laughing through open windows. Lucia graduates in a year. She already has job offers. But I think she'll stay. Not because she owes it to me. Not because I asked. Because this is hers now. This center. This movement. This future. One day I'll step back. Not because I'm tired, but because it's time. That's what real family does, they lift you until you can fly on your own. Then they get out of your way. Carmen's grave is still the only one beneath the guava tree. Sometimes I sit with her when things get quiet. I tell her what we've done. What we're planning. How Lucia's thriving. How the kids are growing faster than we can keep up. I don't ask for signs. Don't need any. Her legacy isn't in the dirt. It's in the light. I used to think the truth ruined me. But the truth didn't destroy me. It rebuilt me. It stripped me down to the bone, yes, but it gave me something to stand on. Something real. Something earned. Not a birthright. A choice. So here I am. Mateo. Son of Carmen. Brother to Lucia. Builder of schools, keeper of promises. Not perfect. But present. And finally, home.